take from that period going into Sunday?
Yeah, I think we got out in transition a lot. Got easy baskets, running the floor, getting layups, but also getting wide open threes.
She had 1 second to react. And in that 1 second, she revealed everything. Not about basketball, not about the Dallas Wings, about who Paige Bueckers actually is underneath all the hype, the headlines, and the highlight reels. Because the moment that just broke the internet, it wasn't a game winner. It wasn't a press conference. It was something messier, something realer, something that nobody in sports media was prepared to cover. And yet here we are, talking about it. The clip started small, like most viral moments do, one random frame, shared by the wrong person at the right time, and suddenly the algorithm catches fire. It was a teammate, one of Paige's Dallas Wings teammates, doing something so unexpected, so genuinely unscripted, that fans couldn't scroll past it. Sports pages grabbed it. Meme accounts ran with it. Within hours, it wasn't a clip anymore. It was a whole moment. But that's not the story. The story is what happened next. Because Paige Bueckers saw it. And instead of the controlled, PR-polished response that every major athlete in 2025 defaults to, she reacted like a real person. Unfiltered. Genuine. The kind of reaction that doesn't get approved by a brand team first. And the internet lost its mind. Not because it was shocking, but because it wasn't. Because in a sports world full of carefully constructed public personas, Paige's response felt like a window into a locker room that actually likes each other. And when fans felt that, they didn't just enjoy the clip. They started asking a much bigger question. Is Paige Bueckers, before she's even played a full WNBA regular season, already becoming the emotional heartbeat of her team? That's not a small question. That's the question that defines franchises, that separates good teams from iconic ones. And the fact that fans are asking it right now, in the middle of spring, before the season even heats up, that says everything. But before we get there, we need to understand what this moment actually was. Because the surface story and the real story are not the same thing. The clip you saw trending, that's just the door. What's behind it is where this gets genuinely interesting. And that's exactly where we're going next. Here's the thing about viral moments in sports. Most of them are accidental. A stumble, a weird face, an audio leak, something nobody planned and everybody laughs about for exactly 48 hours before the internet forgets it ever happened. This was different. The clip that started everything came from inside the Dallas Wings camp. And if you haven't seen it yet, the setup is almost too simple to explain. One of Paige's teammates, in what was clearly a completely unguarded moment, did something so genuinely funny and so authentic themselves that the reaction from everyone in the room was immediate. Real laughter. The kind you can't manufacture for content. The kind that only happens when a group of people are actually comfortable with each other. Now that might sound minor, but hold that thought, because it matters more than you think. In professional sports, especially women's basketball right now, the pressure on young rosters to look unified is massive. Teams know the cameras are always on. They know every clip gets dissected. So there's this unspoken tension, especially with a franchise centerpiece like Paige Bueckers, where teammates can start to feel more like supporting cast than equal contributors, where the energy in the room quietly shifts from team to brand. But this clip didn't feel like that at all. It felt like a group of people who actually enjoy spending time together. Fans noticed immediately. The comments weren't just about the joke itself. They were about the energy, about how relaxed everyone looked, about how nobody seemed to be performing for the camera. That's a specific kind of chemistry, and you either have it or you don't. You can't coach it into a roster midseason. And here's where the story starts to turn. Because once that clip hit 1 million views, the algorithm started doing something interesting. It didn't just keep circulating the original moment. It started surfacing older clips, practice footage, sideline moments, behind-the-scenes content from Wings camp. People were going looking for something, evidence of a pattern, of something that this one clip hinted at, but didn't fully prove. And what they found, we'll get to that. But first, you need to understand exactly why Paige Bueckers carries the kind of weight that makes her reaction to anything automatically newsworthy. Because that part of the story is darker than people expect. Let's be real for a second. Paige Bueckers is not a normal rookie. She never was. And walking into the WNBA in 2025, she carries something most players, even the great ones, don't have to deal with from day one. She carries a narrative, a pre-written story that the entire sports world has been building for years, with or without her permission. Think about what that looks like from the outside. 5 years of UConn dominance, 2 national championships, a torn ACL that nearly derailed everything, a comeback that made people emotional in arenas full of strangers, nil deals that made her a household name before she ever played a professional game, magazine covers, award shows, a cultural presence that most WNBA veterans have never experienced even at the peak of their careers. All of that before the WNBA even officially welcomed her. That is an extraordinary amount of expectation for one person to absorb. And what happens to athletes under that kind of weight really happens is more complicated than most sports coverage admits. Some fold, not publicly, not in ways that make highlights, but privately. They become guarded, calculated. They stop being people and start being products. Every word gets filtered through a mental PR machine before it leaves their mouth. You've seen this. You know exactly what it looks like. The scripted post-game answers, the safe social media posts, the perfectly curated image that never lets anyone in. It's not weakness, it's survival. When the entire world has an opinion about you, building walls is the rational response. And Paige had every reason to do exactly that. The injury alone changed things. An ACL tear at 21, when your entire identity is built around being the best player on any court you step onto, that's not just physical. That's a crisis of self. Who are you when the thing that defines you is taken away? What happens to the narrative when the protagonist can't perform? She answered that question. Publicly, painfully, and she came back. But here's what nobody talks about enough. The comeback didn't just restore her game. It built something in her. A specific kind of quiet confidence that doesn't need to announce itself. The kind that only forms when you've been at the bottom and climbed out with your own hands. And it's that confidence, that almost unbothered sense of self, that made her reaction to that teammate clip so uniquely revealing. Because she didn't react like someone managing an image. She reacted like someone who knows exactly who she is. And in 2025, in the middle of a WNBA era that is moving faster and louder than ever before, that quality is rarer than any jump shot. But why does that matter for the Wings specifically? Why does her locker room chemistry carry more weight than just good vibes? Because the Dallas Wings aren't just building a team right now. They're building something that could define a franchise for a decade. Dallas has a Paige Bueckers problem. Not the kind you're thinking. Not a talent problem. Not a chemistry problem. A different kind of problem. The kind that builds quietly and then explodes at the worst possible moment. Here's the issue. When you build a team around one transformative player, and Paige Bueckers is genuinely transformative, there's a gravitational pull that can slowly distort everything around her. The franchise centers all its energy on making her successful. The media covers the team through her lens. Fans show up initially because of her. Sponsors activate around her. Even the coaching staff, consciously or not, start structuring conversations around her presence. And meanwhile, the other 11 players on that roster, they feel it. They don't always say it, but they feel it. The best professional teams in the history of sports have one thing in common, and it's not the star player's stats. It's whether the star player makes the people around them feel like equals, whether she walks into a room and pulls focus, or whether she walks in and makes the room bigger. Those are two completely different things. And it's genuinely hard to manufacture the second one. This is where that viral moment becomes more than just content. When fans watched that clip and saw a teammate, not Paige, being the center of energy in the room, while Paige laughed along like a co-star instead of a headliner, that's the sign. The real sign. The one that front offices pay attention to even when media doesn't. It says the gravity is balanced. It says that whoever is in that locker room doesn't feel like they're living in someone else's story. And that matters enormously for what Dallas is trying to build. Because talent without cohesion is just individual performance. Pretty to watch, hard to win with. Cohesion without talent is scrappiness. Admirable, insufficient. But talent with real cohesion? That's dangerous in the best way. The Wings had a complicated few seasons before this. Roster turnover, coaching transitions, that unsettled feeling of a franchise still searching for its identity. A lot of cities never recover from that cycle. But the energy around the Wings right now feels genuinely different. And the interesting question, the one that's starting to quietly surface in WNBA circles, is how much of that shift traces back to the culture Paige is building intentionally or not, because there's a pattern emerging. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Here's where it gets complicated, though, because Paige isn't the only story in the WNBA right now. And the league she's entering is more competitive, more watched, and more complicated than any version of it that came before. The era she's stepping into, it has rules nobody fully understands yet. 2 years ago, if you said the WNBA will be one of the most talked about sports properties in America, people would have smiled politely and changed the subject. Now it's just the truth. The numbers are undeniable. Ratings records, sold out arenas, social media engagement that rivals Major League Baseball, a media rights deal that nobody in sports could have predicted 5 years ago. The WNBA isn't growing, it's transforming. And the thing driving that transformation is something the league spent decades trying to manufacture and never quite could. Personalities. Real ones. Complicated ones. Ones with rivalries and friendships and drama and storylines that extend far beyond box scores. Caitlin Clark arrived and became a phenomenon before she ever played a professional game. Angel Reese turned every interaction into appointment television. Cameron Brink built a media presence that crossed over into lifestyle and culture. And now Paige Bueckers is entering this ecosystem at the exact moment when the attention is at its highest. The stakes are at their highest. The scrutiny is at its highest. Every single thing she does gets captured, cropped, clipped, and contextualized by someone who either loves her, is skeptical of her, or is waiting for her to make a mistake. That is an almost impossible environment to be authentic inside. And yet authenticity is exactly what the WNBA's new audience demands more than anything. Here's the paradox. The fans driving this era of growth are different from traditional sports fans. They came through social media. They follow athletes the way they follow creators, not just for performance, but for personality, values, relatability, realness. They can smell performance. They can feel when something is calculated. The athletes who thrive in this new era aren't necessarily the best players. They're the ones who figured out how to be genuinely themselves at scale. And that is not easy. It might actually be the hardest skill in modern sports. Some players figured it out naturally, and their careers accelerated because of it. Some tried to manufacture it. And the audience turned on them quietly, the way audiences always do when they sense something's off. Paige's reaction to that teammate clip went viral not because it was impressive. It went viral because it felt real in a media environment absolutely saturated with things that don't. But here's where it gets even more interesting. That viral moment triggered something specific in the WNBA fan community. A conversation that's been building for a while, but never had the right catalyst to go fully public. People started asking whether Paige is the league's next defining figure. Not just a star player, not just a franchise cornerstone, the face. And the debate around that question, the pushback, the support, the context, reveals a lot about where the WNBA is heading. And a lot about what Paige would actually have to become if that were true. Because the last person who carried that title left a complicated legacy. Here's a question most sports fans don't sit with long enough. What does it actually cost to become the face of something? Because it sounds like pure upside, more visibility, more sponsorships, more cultural impact. But historically, the athletes who carry a league's identity on their shoulders pay for it in ways that take years to fully understand. Think about what that role actually demands. You become responsible for moments that aren't yours. When the league has a controversy, people look to you for a statement. When a teammate does something that creates headlines, your response becomes part of the story. When attendance dips at games you're not playing in, analysts use your name in the same sentence. You become less of a player and more of a symbol, and symbols have to be maintained constantly. For women's athletes specifically, the weight of that role has historically come with an extra layer that male athletes simply don't face. The expectation isn't just to perform excellently. It's to represent the entire project of women's sports being taken seriously. Every loss gets used by skeptics. Every controversy gets amplified disproportionately. Every personal choice, who you're friend with, what you say publicly, how you handle teammates, gets filtered through the lens of whether it helps or hurts the cause. That is an enormous burden for a 23-year-old to carry. And yet, when you watch that teammate clip and you watch Paige's reaction, the thing that strikes you is that she doesn't look burdened. She looks free, not carefree, not naive, not unaware of the weight, but genuinely comfortable in her own skin in a way that is unusual for someone operating under that much scrutiny. That might be the most interesting thing about Paige Bueckers right now. Not her crossover, not her shooting percentage. The fact that she has somehow, in a media environment designed to make young athletes anxious and performative, figure out how to just be herself. And that's not an accident. That's not luck. That's the product of something specific. A relationship with basketball that was never just about the attention that came with it. People who followed her story closely point to the ACL injury as a turning point, not just physically, mentally. When everything that defined her publicly was taken away, she had to figure out what remained when the spotlight went off. And what remained, according to everyone who knows her, was someone who genuinely loves the game, genuinely loves her teammates, and genuinely doesn't need the external validation to feel okay. That sounds simple. It is extraordinarily rare. But there's a version of this story that isn't clean. Because becoming the face of the WNBA, even if Paige handles it perfectly, comes with consequences for the players around her. And some of those consequences are already starting to surface. Let's talk about the people the camera doesn't follow. Because in every story about a rising star, there's an untold second story. The teammates who share the same locker room, put in the same hours, and absorb the structural unfairness of playing alongside someone the world has decided is more important than them. This isn't unique to Paige. It happens with every transformative talent in sports. But the WNBA's current media ecosystem makes it more intense than ever, because content creation is now a core part of how players build careers, develop fan bases, and generate income. And when the algorithm decides that one player on your roster is a story, every clip from your team gets filtered through her. Teammate does something great. Paige Bueckers' teammate does something great. You score 20 points. The headline finds a way to mention Paige in the same sentence. For players with serious professional ambitions, and every player in the WNBA has serious professional ambitions, that dynamic is genuinely difficult to navigate. So here's why that teammate clip matters on a different level. The player in the clip wasn't being overshadowed. She was the center of the moment, and Paige wasn't fighting to reclaim attention. She was amplifying someone else's energy. That's a specific kind of emotional intelligence. The kind that says, I don't need every moment to be about me. Stars who have that quality change locker room cultures in ways that coaching never can. Because teammates aren't just watching game film and running drills. They're watching how the star behaves when the cameras are on, when she gets a bad call, when a younger player makes a mistake in a big moment, when someone else gets the press attention. Those micro moments form the actual culture of a team, not the motivational speeches, not the team-building exercises, not the slogans on the practice facility wall. And based on what's been visible so far, the clips, the behind-the-scenes moments, the way teammates talk about her, and the rare interviews that venture past the surface, the Wings locker room feels like somewhere people want to be. That's the single hardest thing to build in professional sports. Now here's where this gets really interesting, because the story so far has been largely positive. The viral moment, the team chemistry, the authentic personality. But there's an uncomfortable question underneath all of this that needs to be addressed. What happens when the expectations don't match the reality on the court? What happens when Paige, and this is not a prediction, it's just the nature of professional sports, has a stretch of games where performance doesn't match the narrative? Because that moment is coming. It comes for everyone. And how the Wings locker room handles that moment will reveal whether everything we've seen so far is real or just a really good trailer. Every player has a first hard stretch, not a bad game, a stretch the kind that lasts long enough for analysts to start changing their tone, for sports talk to discover a new narrative, for the same people who were celebrating you 2 months ago to start framing everything through the lens of disappointing. It happens to every great player. LeBron went through it. Luka went through it. In women's basketball, Sabrina Ionescu's first WNBA season was so rough that people briefly questioned whether the college legend could translate to pros. She figured it out. We know how that story ends. But in the moment, it was real pressure, real scrutiny, real doubt, from outside and probably from inside too. For Paige Bueckers, that moment, whenever it comes, is going to arrive with a media environment 10 times more intense than what any WNBA player before has faced at the same career stage. Think about that. Every first-year struggle she has will be live content, real-time analysis, split-screen comparisons with her UConn highlights, hot takes about whether the WNBA is too physical or whether the transition from college was harder than expected. All the narratives that the machine will manufacture because the machine needs to run. And the question isn't whether Paige can handle the basketball part. That's the least uncertain thing about her future. The question is whether the team around her, the culture being built right now, in these viral locker room moments, is strong enough to hold together when it gets hard. Because here's what history shows. Teams that are close before adversity hits usually get closer after. They've already built the trust. They've already proven to each other that the relationship is real. When things go sideways, they don't fracture, they compress. They pull together the same way they laugh together. But teams that were performing unity, teams where the chemistry was good vibes without real depth, they crack. Sometimes visibly, sometimes quietly, in ways that only show up in the numbers and in the body language when things aren't going well. The viral teammate moment told us something about which version the Wings might be. It told us the chemistry isn't manufactured. It's real enough to survive being accidental, real enough to show up in an unguarded moment on camera. But here's the twist in this part of the story. It's not actually Paige's performance that will most define this team's character under pressure. It's going to be one specific relationship, one dynamic in that locker room that hasn't been talked about nearly enough. And when you hear it, you're going to wonder why nobody focused on it sooner. Every team has a hidden axis. Not the star player, not the coach. A specific relationship, usually between the star and one teammate, that either hold the whole ecosystem together or quietly unravels it. In championship teams, this relationship is almost always the same type. The star and the veteran leader who was there before her. The player who built something with his franchise before the new identity arrived. Who has credibility in the locker room that predates the hype, the media circus, and the organizational shift that comes with a franchise centerpiece. This relationship is a real culture test, because if the star and that veteran figure genuinely trust each other, if there's real mutual respect, not just coexistence, then everything else tends to organize around that foundation. Younger players feel safe. The locker room has a center of gravity that isn't just a star. Coaches have an ally in the room who carries weight on both sides of the dynamic. But if there's even mild tension in that relationship, it leaks, always, into the on-court communication, into how the team responds when things go wrong, into the little moments that don't make highlights but define seasons. For the Dallas Wings right now, the dynamics around that axis are still being written. And what's interesting, genuinely interesting, is how the viral teammate moment maps onto this. Because the player who generated that clip wasn't a junior player, wasn't someone new to the league. The moment came from someone with WNBA experience. Someone whose ease and comfort in that moment, with Paige right there, speaks to something being built between the established veterans in that locker room and the new face of the franchise. That's not nothing. That's actually significant. The hardest thing about the transition Paige Bueckers represents to the Wings isn't the talent gap. It's the identity shift. Franchises have personalities built over years. Players have pride in what was built before a star arrived. And when a new era begins, especially one as loud and media-driven as this one, there's always a risk that the history feels erased. The fact that the viral moment came from within the culture, not in spite of it, suggests that history isn't being erased. It's being extended. And that's a completely different kind of team story. But even if everything we've observed is real, the chemistry, the culture, the emotional leadership, the veterans buying in, there's one last layer to this story that brings everything back to the original question. Why did Paige's reaction go so viral? Not the clip itself, not the teammate, Paige's specific reaction. The answer to that reveals something about where women's basketball is, where it's going, and what Paige Bueckers might actually represent for a generation of fans who are watching the WNBA for the first time. Here's the real answer. Paige's reaction went viral because it confirmed something millions of fans desperately want to believe but weren't sure they were allowed to, that she's actually like this. Think about how many times in modern sports culture you've watched someone who seemed genuine turn out to be a construction, a carefully managed persona that held up until the pressure cracked it. Athletes who were relatable until they got the contract, who were humble until the followers came, who were funny and real until someone explained to them what being a brand meant. That cycle has happened so many times, so publicly, that sports fans are preemptively skeptical now. They want to believe in authenticity, but they've been burned enough times that they watch every viral moment through a layered defense, waiting for the reveal, waiting to find out it was performance. Paige's reaction landed the way it did because nothing about it felt like performance. Not the way she laughed, not the way she responded, not the energy she brought to a moment that she had no obligation to engage with publicly at all. She could have ignored the clip, could have left a safe emoji in the comments, could have deployed any of a dozen non-reactions that protect the image without saying anything real. She didn't, and that choice, or more accurately, that non-choice, because it didn't look like a choice at all, it looked like someone just being themselves, is what created the reaction it did. Because in the current WNBA era, with all its noise and growth and competing narratives and social media warfare, what fans are most hungry for is simple. Real. Not curated real. Not strategic real. Actually real. The kind where you laugh when something is funny and you don't check with your agent first. Paige Bueckers is 23 years old. She is entering the most scrutinized professional debut in women's basketball history. The weights on her shoulders are real. The expectations are real. The machine surrounding her is enormous and never stops running. And in the middle of all of that, she reacted to a viral teammate clip the same way any of us would with a friend we actually like. That's not small. That's the whole thing. Because sports at its best has always been about more than winning. It's about watching people, real people, move through something that matters, deal with pressure, show you who they are when it counts. Paige Bueckers hasn't won a WNBA championship yet. She hasn't broken records. The season is still young. The hardest tests are ahead. But if that reaction told us anything real, and it did, then what's coming in Dallas over the next few years isn't just a good basketball story. It might be a great one. And if you watch this whole video, you already know why you're going to keep watching. Because she's just getting started.